You are listening to The Confidence Project, episode number 152. Welcome to The Confidence Project. I am your host, certified life coach Lærke Nielsen, and I help smart women who doubt themselves calm their overthinking brain so they can stop hiding in the background and instead speak up and take confident action. In this podcast, we are shifting your identity. You're becoming a woman who believes in yourself and who wants to live her best life starting today. Hey there. You probably have heard a million times on social media about having your own back and how important it is to have your own back. But what does it really mean? It's sort of a life coach or self-development cliche to have your own back. And in this episode, I want to share my thoughts about what having your own back actually means and how you can work on having your own back. So this is going to be a short and sweet episode, and I am working on something behind the scenes that you will get to know more about in some weeks. And therefore, this week is just going to be a short episode. So having your own back, if I was to say like very briefly, what does it mean? Then I would say it's being able to speak kindly to yourself when your brain defaults to negative. Situations where your brain automatically gives you negative self-talk. If you can redirect your thoughts to something kind and self-supportive, you are having your own back. It is also when you do not abandon yourself, even if you feel tempted to do so, due to other people's reactions. So I'm going to give you some examples. You make a decision, and then the next day or shortly after, you start doubting it. Was it the right decision? What if this is the wrong decision? Then having your own back means staying true to the version of you who made that decision, and remember your reasons why. When you decide to trust yourself that you had good reasons for making this decision and you're going to stick to that and make it the right decision. So instead of going back and forth in your mind whether this was the right decision or not, and should you have done something else, or was there like a third option and so on, which can really drain so much of our energy, you decide to trust that you made the right decision and that you're going to do your best to make the most out of this situation and actually make it the right decision instead of thinking that there's objectively a right and a wrong. You can choose that the decision you make, that you're going to make it the right decision. It could also be that you said or did something and you are not sure how to interpret other people's reactions. Like they look away, or they have a funny face, or it seems like it didn't really land with them, but they're also not clearly expressing disagreement. It can be this kind of a little bit unsettling situation where you are insecure about how did they receive this? How did they interpret what I just said or did? In that situation, you remind yourself that you cannot control other people's response to you. You can only control yourself. And nobody is perfect. And you have a right to sometimes say things or do things that doesn't land completely clearly with other people. And maybe you even feel a little bit embarrassed from time to time. That is completely normal and a human experience. It could also be that you actually make a mistake. You do something where afterwards you realize that this was a mistake. It was not just because other people thought it was a mistake. You also think this was actually a mistake. I should have done differently. And you feel bad about it, and then your brain is going to start to beat you up and give you all sorts of negative thoughts about yourself. And in this situation, having your own back basically means you remind yourself again that nobody is perfect and we all make mistakes. It's a normal human condition. We make mistakes. And then instead of being negative towards yourself and repeating the situation for yourself, like creating a lot of suffering in your brain, instead of doing that, you focus on what can I learn from this situation? Is there any learning to be drawn from this? And of course, if there are other people involved and you feel really bad about it, then you can also choose to apologize, which is basically just owning your mistakes. And this can help you forgive yourself from making a mistake when you go directly and say to someone, I know this was my fault and I'm sorry for that. And in other situations, of course, you just want to move on and let it go if it was a minor mistake and you're the only one who's impacted. It could also be a situation where you had to perform in some way. Let's say you were to give a speech or a presentation and you have practiced and you knew you could do pretty good in this presentation, and then you get nervous and you don't perform as well as you wanted to. And then afterwards, you are going to have a lot of negative thoughts about that. Your brain is going to try to beat you up and tell you that it was not good enough and it was really too bad because you did better when you rehearsed. Basically, sometimes in these situations, we can beat the crap out of ourselves, even though we actually did our best. And it's completely human to be nervous sometimes when we are to do a presentation. And that is, of course, also a situation where you can practice having your own back and reminding yourself, hey, I did as good as I could. And it really doesn't help me to be very negative towards myself. And of course, there are many situations where we can talk about having our own back. But another one that also came to my mind when I was thinking about this episode is that you do something challenging. You put yourself out of the comfort zone. Like you do a dare of the day, like I talked about last week. You do a dare of the day and then you experience a big feeling, like feeling really vulnerable or nervous or shaky or like regret that you did it because this was so embarrassing. We can also call it vulnerability hangover. This is when we put ourselves out there outside of the comfort zone. We show ourselves to other people or we do something courageous. And then afterwards, we feel really embarrassed about it or feel almost a little bit of shame about ourselves for doing that. And we wish we didn't do that. This is also completely normal. Everyone knows what it feels like to have vulnerability hangover. And having your own back in this situation is where you remind yourself that this was actually a success because you did the challenge, you did the dare, and you follow through on that. And the whole point is actually to do it while having all these negative emotions, being able to follow through on your decisions and at the same time tolerate the negative emotions. Because like this, they take less power from you. So having your own back here is basically reminding yourself, okay, I did a dare of the day, or I did something challenging, I did something courageous, and the point was to do the thing, not necessarily do it perfectly or do it without having any negative feelings. The point was to do it, and I achieved that. So that would be my take on having your own back in that situation. It could also be that you experience rejection. Like someone who is rejecting an idea that you had, or someone disagrees with you, or it could be in dating. So you are dating someone and then they tell you, this is not really right for me, I don't feel the right connection here. And then instead of making it mean that you were not good enough and there's something wrong with you and you are somehow broken, someone else is better than you, then you choose to speak kindly to yourself. You choose a supportive inner self-talk, and you sort of take charge of your brain and take charge of your thoughts and redirect into something that feels more supportive and maybe more neutral, in the realization that if the one person doesn't want to continue, that means that you're not a good match. And having your own back, you can imagine this is a metaphor for catching yourself where you're about to fall. Like you're about to fall, and instead of relying on someone else to catch your back, well, you have it yourself. You catch yourself when you are about to fall. And it basically means not giving into this destructive inner dialogue that your brain could be running after an experience. You experience something that you interpret as a failure or as embarrassing or that you did something wrong. And then you have this negative inner self-talk. And when you decide not to give in to that and to take charge of that, that is having your own back. So this means that first of all, you need to notice that this is happening. You need to be aware that your brain is now trying to give you a hard time. And then at the same time, realize that you have a choice. You don't have to buy into that. You don't have to believe everything your brain tells you right now. And then you want to find another and more self-supportive way of thinking. So there are these like two elements. First, notice what's going on catch your brain in starting to give you all this negative soundtrack, and then decide to choose another soundtrack. Put another playlist on your brain that feels more self-supportive. And having your own back also means staying with yourself, not abandoning yourself. Let's say you have expressed an opinion about something to another person. You have told them that you don't agree with the way they do things, or you think there's a better way of doing things. And this other person doesn't agree. They are firm in their opinion. Then you might feel tempted to move a little bit. You might feel tempted to stretch and to abandon yourself and say, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. And okay, it's probably better we do like you say. In this situation, having your own back means that you can still stay with your opinion. Of course, unless you clearly see a different perspective and you change your mind. But if you don't, if you still have the same opinion, you can still stay with that and say, I still think this is the best way of doing things, or I still think this is more ideal, this is more appropriate. And then, of course, you can decide on a compromise, or you can decide to follow through on something else. It doesn't mean that you have to be stubborn and stick to your own opinion. But having your own back could, in this situation, mean you still have the same opinion. You do not change your mind because of other people. You express your opinion, and you can calmly and confidently decide to disagree and still follow through on what the other person wants, depending on what is the context, of course. So we can say that having your own back is a two-step process. It's very simple. Normally we talk about 3 steps or more, but here we only have 2 steps. So the first one is the awareness. Be aware of the fact that your brain is making you abandon yourself, or it's trying to give you a hard time. Now you are getting a lot of negative self-talk from your brain. Typically after a situation where you feel a little bit shaky, you were a little bit more visible than normally, you expressed an opinion that was in disagreement with everyone else, or you showed up more courageously than you normally do. These are the situations where your brain might start to beat you up or judge you or give you a lot of negative inner dialogue. And here you want to just notice that this is what's happening now. It's not the truth that I'm hearing from my thoughts. This is a negative self-talk. This is my brain offering me negative self-talk, and I don't have to believe this. So you can, in this situation, just say, okay, brain, I see what you're doing. I notice what is happening right now. So that's the first step, awareness. And the second step is intentional redirection of your thoughts. So decide to choose self-supportive thoughts. Choose to focus on learning and growth and allowing yourself to be a human being who sometimes makes mistakes and who sometimes says things or does things that don't always land completely the way you want it to with other people. So it doesn't have to be a mistake. It can just be you tell a joke and nobody laughs. Nobody gets it. Or you say something that you feel really strongly about, you express an opinion, and no one responds. This doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. So here, you want to just remind yourself, okay, we don't all think in the same way, and I have no control on other people. I can just control myself, and there's absolutely no reason to be negative towards myself just because other people don't always react the way I would want them to. Now, you can think of what are the upsides of having your own back, and I want to say a few words about that, because it's not just to protect yourself, it's actually really good for your confidence to practice having your own back. You are not depending on others to tell you that it was okay, you were not a failure, it was not a mistake, or the reason I didn't laugh at your joke was I didn't really get it, or yeah, I see what you mean and I agree now that you have explained more in details what your opinion is. You don't depend on all this. You don't need to explain yourself or to check in with people and ask why they didn't react the way you wanted to. You don't need other people to reassure you that it wasn't actually embarrassing and it was okay and the way you did the presentation was okay and so on. You can do all this for yourself. It doesn't mean that you can't ask someone for feedback. That's a different story. But you don't depend on other people to sort of catch you when you are just about to fall. You don't need someone else to have your back because you have it yourself. And that makes you very resilient and it makes you very emotionally independent. And this, of course, will allow you to be more courageous. If you know you can catch yourself when you're about to fall, it's like an emotional safety net. of course, you will be willing to do more courageous things. And that will again build your confidence, because when you allow yourself to try things that you are not yet good at, or you have never tried before, or you just put yourself out there more, you challenge yourself more, and you do more courageous things, well, that will actually help build your confidence. It will help build your self-confidence. All that is something that help build your self-confidence, and that you can allow yourself to do because you know you have your own back. You're less scared of trying new things, and you're more willing to put yourself out there. So next time you experience something that feels like either an embarrassing moment or even a failure, or a situation where you didn't perform as well as you wanted, or you said a joke and nobody laughed and so on, try to notice what's happening in your brain. Try to notice if you start to have a lot of negative inner self-talk. The negative soundtrack is starting to run, and you feel your brain is very criticizing towards you. And if that happens, then try to gently but firmly redirect your thoughts into something more supportive. And remind yourself of the things that you would tell a friend, and the things that you know to be true, that we cannot control other people, that it's human to make mistakes, that it's not everything we say or do that lands exactly the way we want it to, and that you are allowed to have an opinion, and you're allowed to not agree with other people on everything. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you at all. And everything you do where you put yourself out there and you're sometimes outside of your comfort zone, that is all something that builds your confidence. And being able to tolerate negative emotions and not let it stop you, that is building confidence. And reminding yourself of that is also having your own back. So I hope this was useful. And as always, I'll be back again next Thursday. Have a wonderful week. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast, I would be happy if you can give me a rating and a review, and share the podcast with a friend. And if you now feel inspired to do this work and become a woman who fully believes in herself, then book a free call on the link in the show notes. I would love to talk to you.